Good evening, Crime Talk aficionados. My name is Scott Reisch, and this is Crime Talk, the most fact-driven, unbiased, true crime channel. Thanks for tuning in. Today is April 20th, and that's right. Today was the Dereck Chauvin verdict. After a 3-week trial, 10 hours of deliberation, and Dereck Chauvin was found guilty of all 3 counts. He was found guilty of second-degree murder, guilty of third-degree murder, and guilty of second-degree manslaughter. He was promptly taken into custody based upon the motion by the district attorney to have his bond revoked. The judge granted the motion, and Dereck Chauvin was taken away in handcuffs. The court ordered that a pre-sentence investigation be prepared, and ultimately the sentencing will be held in roughly 8 weeks. That date to be determined exactly in a couple of days by the court via order. So that is the headline for today, no doubt. Let's talk about it. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Scott Reisch. I am a practicing criminal defense attorney, and I am in now my 26th year of doing criminal defense work. So I have handled just about every type of case, and the purpose of our channel is to educate people, talk about the facts, talk about the law, not to speculate on a whole lot of stuff that's not relevant to a trial, but focus on the facts. I have said all along, if this jury wanted to convict him, which obviously they did, there was plenty of evidence in which to do that. I also said that if the jury wanted to find Dereck Chauvin not guilty, there was some evidence in which they could do that as well. Obviously, they rejected the defense argument that somehow Mr. Floyd's lifestyle, becoming addicted to opioids, having fentanyl in his system along with methamphetamine, basically caused him to have a heart attack. That was rejected. The jury unanimously found, all 12 of them, that Dereck Chauvin basically, the exact word, asphyxiated George Floyd, and that he was the substantial cause, that he caused the death without intention of George Floyd. And so the jury has spoken. Now on the most serious charge on second-degree murder, Dereck Chauvin is looking at up to 40 years in prison, 25 on the third-degree murder and the second-degree manslaughter. The state has asked for a finding of aggravating circumstances, and the court will actually make the determination. Normally, the jury would, as required under the law, but you can waive that right and have the court make that determination, and that's what Dereck Chauvin decided to do. That all took place formally on the record yesterday after the jury received their charge to go and deliberate, and there was a hearing shortly thereafter, which was rather interesting. That's also the one that created a little bit of controversy because the judge made comments about public officials commenting on the judicial process and basically said he wished that all public officials would keep their comments to themselves and let the co-equal branch of government do their job, and they don't need anything from outside influences to do that. In fact, the court went as far as to say that those outside influences could potentially result in Dereck Chauvin receiving a new trial if the appellate courts find that it resulted in an unfair decision. So we'll have to wait and see. For those of you who haven't joined us, hopefully we have some new people here this evening. If you have never joined us, please hit the like as well as the subscribe button and hit that little bell. Having a little issue with YouTube, all right? Not exactly sure what is going on, but it would seem as though a lot of people are not getting our notifications when we're putting up new content or going live. Some people have referred to this as, what was the exact word? Shadow banning our channel. And I know you find this hard to believe, but we try to just tell the facts. And some people say, I don't like what you say. Therefore, basically, I'm going to tell YouTube this. And they put up a complaint. And frankly, nobody's telling anybody you have to like what we say. We don't try to get into the too controversial. We just call it the way it is. Here's the law. Here's the facts. This is the way it could come out. We're not looking to create a bunch of controversy. We want to talk about relevant cases, specifically in the true crime genre here, and not looking to get into the controversial stage, nor are we here to speculate. But one thing I've learned on YouTube is that no matter what you do or you say, somebody is going to be offended. All right. As I got to tell a jury the other day, that what I love about my job is that we get to talk about the elephant in the room. I get to ask the elephant in the room questions, and hopefully we get good answers. And you may not like the questions being asked, but everybody deserves the answers. Let's see here. Question. Got a super chat. Now, obviously, we don't grovel or beg for super chats, but they do light up on my screen and they get highlighted. So certainly increases the chances of your question being asked. Connor Spencer, question. Scott, do you think the judge had enough grounds to call a mistrial? If so, why didn't he? I don't think the court had enough to declare mistrial. I think this judge, if he thought that somehow Dereck Chauvin would not have received a fair trial, that there was something done, that he would have, in fact, declared a mistrial. Judges at this point, however, have figured, hey, we've come this far. Let's see what happens. And ultimately, if there's an issue, it can be taken up on appeal. But I personally don't think that there was anything that possibly rose to the level. I mean, certainly there were things that were said in closing that may rise to the level of prosecutorial misconduct. Certainly you can't basically say that the defense is creating stories, i.e. lies, the way it was characterized, but the judge made those, sustained those objections and dealt with it accordingly, and told that the jury that they couldn't consider that. As it relates to all the statements and whether the jury should be sequestered the entire time, that is a decision that the judge made. He stands by it. And one thing you realize when attorneys become judges is that they make their decision, and they rarely, if ever, change their mind, because one, then they have to admit that they're wrong and basically start all over again, and they don't like to do that. So let's see here. A question, Star Tracker tracks. Why are police officers being charged so quickly in the U.S.? Isn't there an internal investigation? I'm in Australia. Excuse my ignorance of your system. Don't have to apologize for anything. Good question. Normally, if there's a police officer involved incident, particularly where somebody dies or there's a shooting, there's always an internal investigation. Normally, the district attorneys will wait for that internal investigation. They'll hopefully bury it, stall it, hope that it goes away. Finally, with the George Floyd case, whether you like it or not, the reality of it is district attorneys are saying, this is a crime. We need to charge somebody because now we have what we rarely ever had in these incidents, which was body cam videos, recordings from bystanders, halo cameras, all the types of things that was not available before. And so much deference was given to the police officers. And now when they have the evidence right in front of you, the district attorney cannot ignore it. So that is why you're seeing so many cases where police officers are being charged much, much sooner. SC, thank you for the super chat. Thanks for streaming the trial. And for everyone, if you haven't watched the trial, we have every day, including jury selection, broken down by day, and you can listen to it. I don't know if we broke it down by witnesses yet. We haven't got that far, I don't think, because, well, frankly, it takes a lot of time. Little known secret, everybody thinks you just, when you stream something or you videotape it, you actually have to like download it to edit it. And depending on the size, it takes a lot of time and space to do that. So it does take some time. But Frank, the hardest working man in show business, did in fact bring you all that live streaming. And hats off to Frank. I could not have done it, I assure you of that. But we have every day, and I think maybe we missed a couple of minutes here or there, but for the most part, it's all there. So if you have any questions or you want to see what took place in the trial, go look. We'll have it all set up and organized. It's worth watching. You get to see the judicial process working. You get to see some very skilled attorneys on both sides, and you get to see a lot of expert testimony in this case as well. I think it's very interesting. I've watched literally nearly all of it. I was in trial last week, so I didn't get to watch most of the defense in real time. Had to watch it, cram it in over this weekend. Virginia Eaton, worth every penny. Thanks for allowing me to watch the entire trial. Also for your unbiased but expert analysis. I try to be, like I said, I have no dog in the fight. I don't know Dereck Chauvin. He's not my client. If he was my client, perhaps I, would be, upset. George Floyd, once again, not my client. Let's look at the facts. That's what it's all about. So many people wanted to ignore relevant facts. The facts were brought out. The jury determined a lot of them were not of any importance. But guess what? They had their day in court. The facts were aired out there. Some things people didn't like because it didn't make George Floyd, look great. But guess what? There's facts. And if that was any other case, those same facts would come in. So just because it was a horrible case, it was, became a case of national attention, doesn't mean that due process is not required for every defendant. One officer's been convicted. Now we see what happens to the next three. Let's see. Respergu. Keep your chin up, Miss Scott. Ignore the detractors. It is what it is. If I was worried about detractors or really worried about what people said or thought about me, I assure you, I wouldn't do criminal defense work, and I certainly wouldn't have done it this long. And it is what it is. I learned a long time ago, you cannot make everyone happy. No matter what you do, what you say, you can mispronounce something, misspeak, and people will jump all over you. Norma, thanks for the super chat. Appreciate it. No questions, but happily 420. All right. Let's see here. Coexist 2020 has a question. Scott, can you believe the look on Chauvin's face when the verdict was read? Absolutely zero. You have thought someone just walked by and said the sun was shining outside. Zero reaction whatsoever. They did have the camera focused, and we had it right here, and he didn't really have much reaction at all. I don't even think he blinked, was my recollection. He just kind of sat there, and, I think he was thinking, all right, maybe they're going to find me guilty of something, but maybe it'll just be the manslaughter charge. Nope, got him on all three. I think that's what he was a little surprised at. They found him guilty of the first, because I'm sure his attorney told him, man, if they find him guilty of the first, they can find you guilty of all three. If it's not guilty on the first one, we got a shot. So that's wasn't probably good for him. And then the only other time that you saw any emotion whatsoever was when he looked over when they said the prosecution moved to revoke Dereck Chauvin's bond, and he was going to be taken into custody. It was kind of that look of like, help me, please. Like, no, don't send him back. So that's when I saw a little bit of emotion on his face. Like, what? They got to take me? Like, do something. Yeah, there's not really much you can do in that particular situation. That situation it sucks. Look, Frank was able to pull that picture up. There's old Dereck Chauvin as the verdict is being read, and literally just kind of looking and no real reaction. I mean, what can you do? It's not like he didn't know that there was a chance he was going to get convicted, or a high likelihood of he's going to get convicted of something. The reality of it is that, it just goes to show you, and I've always said this about doing what I do, so many people think that, I'll never get in trouble. I'm a good person. I would never have to hire somebody in the criminal defense area whatsoever. But things happen. Everybody can be entitled. Everybody can have one bad day that can forever change their life, and it can put them in peril where they are literally looking at spending time in prison. People just somehow don't believe that it can happen. It can happen to anyone. It can happen from whether you come from a good background or a not so great background. It can happen to anyone. People just don't think that it can happen to them, and it can. And maybe, hopefully, I hope it doesn't happen to you, any of your family members, or your friends, but throughout your life, someone you know, and hopefully it's not you, but a family member or a friend will more than likely have to hire a criminal defense attorney. And hopefully, like I said, it's not you, but it's something. Navy vet. It's disgraceful when those in office take sides against the Constitution that they all took an oath to sort and protect. They go out and ramp up violence and destroy their own cities. Now, I don't think there's been any violence or rioting thus far. There's no reason why anybody should, because justice was served. And even if it was a not guilty on all counts, justice is served if that's the way the jury decides. You can go back and look at our videos. I've said, whatever the verdict is, respect the verdict. Here, you have to respect the verdict. Remember, the jurors had a perspective that we didn't have. Yes, we were able to see the video. Yes, we were able to observe the witnesses. But the jurors were there in place, in person, and they were able to truly get a sense of the witnesses, judge their credibility. And, that's why you cannot criticize a jury for their verdict. They were there. They heard the evidence. They decided whether it was sufficient to meet the burden of proof that the government has, which is beyond a reasonable doubt. So there we are on that. Earthbound Spirit, super chat here. What do you think will end up being used for and his sentence will be? Is there emerging expectation? Well, we talked about this a little earlier when we went live when they were reading the verdict. He was found guilty of second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. Although he was found guilty of all of them, since he was found guilty of all of them, and I would have to go through and kind of do a quick analysis, but as a general rule, if it's second-degree murder, that necessarily includes third-degree murder, which also includes second-degree manslaughter. They just add basically an element, which is usually a knowing or the intent. So they're very, very similar. So more than likely, these will merge, and the judge will say, okay, I'm going to sentence you. The third-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter would merge with the second-degree murder, and therefore I'm going to punish you up to the maximum, which is 40 years as of right now on the second-degree murder. If the court finds that they don't merge, then he can still run them concurrent or consecutive to one another. More than likely, since it's the same conduct that's alleged, the court would run those concurrent, but each state has very different nuances and laws in regards to sentencing considerations when it comes to the same evidence being presented to prove basically the same act, just different elements. So I would anticipate that I believe Mr. Chauvin will get whacked pretty good by this judge. I think Judge Cahill was a very fair judge. I think he gave both sides a fair shake, but I also believe that he will whack Chauvin pretty hard because as a police officer, he was bound to protect and serve. And, for lack of a better term, he didn't do that, right? He's now been convicted of killing George Floyd. You don't have to say he's alleged of. He's been convicted of it. And he has now been, forever, he'll be George Floyd's killer. The question is, will the other officers be convicted alongside of him? But I would expect a lengthy sentence, given the fact that he had, the judge can consider all of the complaints that he had as an officer before and basically say, hey, you know what? You were a cowboy and, this is kind of no surprise. It was just a matter not of if something like this would happen, but when, just based upon Chauvin's past police experience. So it is what it is. I think it's going to be a big sentence, but I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it. Okay. I mean, let's face it. He's convicted of killing George Floyd. And Mary Rose says here 10 to 15 years. And but I think it's going to be a little bit higher than that. I would say 20 or above. I had a case once where a police officer was convicted of committing a crime. And I'm thinking, well, you don't want to send him to prison, judge. I mean, he's a police officer. He'll be in segregation. He won't get the good time credit. So let's just give him, let's give him probation, all those good years. And the judge says, no. He said, and I quote, and I'll never forget it, you were given a badge to serve and protect, and you spit on it. And he gave him the maximum sentence for that particular case. So it's going to be interesting to watch the sentencing, and that's just the way it is. Like I said, I don't know what else more we can say about it other than, the jury made the right decision. Why? Because they unanimously agreed upon it based upon the evidence that they had. The process is now, if there's an appeal, if they want to do that, then they can do that. As it relates to other people, politicians will be politicians. I wish they would stay out of it. Obviously, I think a lot of people fed the frenzy, but my hat's off to the judge because he did allow this trial to be televised so that everybody can see, what took place, what the evidence is. We don't have to rely upon a summary. We all don't have to go out and order a transcript of the proceedings. It's all right there. Heck, like I said, it's in our library, so to speak, on our channel. You can watch every minute of the George Floyd trial. And it's worth watching. And there's some witnesses that are a little slow. But yeah, Willow, Mr. Reich, you look a little tired and under the weather. We appreciate that you're here, etc. I appreciate all that. Thank you. And I feel a little tired, but I think it's just because I was in trial last week, and you just are constantly working. Always when you're in trial, you get up about 4:30 in the morning, you stop about 11, you toss and you turn, and it just takes a couple of days to recharge the batteries, even though it's already Tuesday. But and then you have to try to catch up and all the work on your desk that you didn't get to do because you were in trial. So thanks. Sorry. Hopefully, so that's good. Samantha, have we heard anything of any happening in Minnesota? Nothing, which is great. That's perfect. We don't want anybody to go do something that's going to damage somebody else's property or harm anybody. Let's see, quantum wannabe. The judge didn't insulate the jury from the public enough. The jury knew threats being made against them. Listen, this is a high-profile case. These jurors knew that they were going to be questioned, and if they thought that they couldn't make a decision based upon threats or perceived threats, I think they would have told the judge, and that would have been it. If the judge thought that they should have sequestered somebody, or if there were legitimate threats, they would have then declared a mistrial. So there you go. Courtney wants to know, how will this verdict play into the trial for the next 3 officers? Will it be admitted? Well, good question there, because obviously the other 3 officers their trials are joined. I think they start in a couple of weeks. First, you're going to have to find a jury that hasn't heard about the verdict. And for the defense, you may be able to say, that's the real bad actor, Dereck Chauvin. I was just kind of standing around here. But under a theory of accessory, or actually complicity, it's not conspiracy, but it's complicity. If you aid, encourage, abet, or assist somebody in doing an illegal act, you're guilty just like you did it yourself. So I'm sure all 3 of those officers are having a very bad night's sleep tonight, thinking, oh my goodness, this could be me. The defense will more than likely point their finger at Dereck Chauvin. The prosecution in the trial for the other 3 officers are going to point their finger at Dereck Chauvin. But guess what? They're also going to say these officers did nothing, and they had an independent duty to help George Floyd, and they didn't do it. So that's how it will come in. There may not be any reference specifically to the guilty verdict. However, everyone is going to know. Scott, does the government provide Chauvin any type of protection while in custody because he was a peace officer? He will for a while. He'll be more likely kept in protective custody. But I would not want to be Dereck Chauvin in custody. They can hold him in protective custody for so long, but eventually, hey, you're going to have to go out, out into, possibly general population. They may move him out of the state. Even then, is there going to be a safe place for him? He's a former police officer. Most people in prison don't like police officers, so they may want to get a crack at him. It's not going to be a fun time for Dereck Chauvin in custody. He will have whatever time he serves is going to be long and unpleasant, no doubt. But yes, the state has an obligation, just like everyone has an obligation to be protected while they're in custody. I don't know, most people aren't aware about it, but people get sued if bad things happen to them. If somebody is sexually assaulted in prison, get beat up, killed, the state usually has to explain why. And if not, if they don't have a good explanation as to what something happened to them and the officers messed up that are watching them, they pay money. Yeah. So Love for Life. She's talking about the amount of fentanyl in the system. It doesn't matter. Even if it was in his system, the jury found that Dereck Chauvin was responsible for George Floyd's death and all that other stuff. Like I said, our opinions, any opinions of anybody, whether you were saying he was guilty from day one or you thought that Dereck Chauvin was innocent, for all intents and purposes, your decision doesn't matter because you weren't on that jury. The jury has spoken, and that's what it really boils down to. Okay. Maria, I think I talked about this already, but the maximum penalty for the second-degree murder is 40 years, 25 for third-degree murder, and 10 for the manslaughter. But those would more than likely merge, so he's looking up to 40, but it could be higher based upon the aggravating circumstances that the prosecution has asked the court to find aggravation as it relates to basically the depraved nature of the offense. So hopefully that answers your question. Let's see. Yeah, so Emily, question. Any thoughts on Chauvin looking completely insane with nonstop writing and not showing any human emotion every single day of the trial? That's probably one of the most difficult things you can do with your client. What do you do, right? It's more difficult when you have a mask on the whole time. The only time that he took the mask off was when his defense counsel was doing his closing argument. Now, obviously, if you only do it for your closing argument, it looks a little staged and insincere. If the defense wanted to show Chauvin's face, they should have given him a face mask or something so that they could see his face. That's always the toughest question. What do you do with your client? Whether he's sitting there charged with murder, SAOC, or just, even just a DUI or something of that nature. What do you do? How do you react? You give him a piece, a pad and paper to take notes, but you don't want him taking so many notes that you look distracted. Like, why are you taking notes, man? You were there, right? Do you look at the juror? Do you look at the jurors? Do you look at the witness? Do you stare at them? Do you make eye contact? I mean, there's so many different things, and it just depends on each client. I've had clients that literally were like, I don't know what we're doing here. We just be found guilty. And they literally sit there and doodle the entire trial. Others are very engaged. I've had clients react where they outburst in court, which never does any good. But I don't think, Chauvin did anything wrong. I mean, like, what are you supposed to do? I don't think he's ever shown much remorse. I'd anticipate that he's going to start now, other than maybe the whole reality of that he could potentially die in prison, maybe setting in. He can't, I think he can probably apologize for his conduct at sentencing, but more than likely he's going to have to keep his mouth shut at sentencing because there's going to be an appeal pending. You don't want to say something that can do that. I don't know. I think the interesting look came when he was going to be remanded and he looked at his attorney, Mr. Nelson, like, you could almost see, even with the mask on at that point, his face, his jaw dropping, like, oh, it's happening again. Like, I've got to go into custody. Like, oh my gosh. So that's probably when that hit. And then now, of course, the second guessing on the part of the defendant shall begin. Okay. And I speak from experience. I have had cases where I was the greatest thing since sliced bread. Oh my God, you're the best. You're not like my other attorneys. You're really good. That was the best closing argument I've ever seen. Oh my God, that was amazing. And then you come back guilty, and it's literally like, who are you? You suck. I want a new attorney. I can't believe you didn't ask that one question that I wanted you to ask. You name it. The second guessing will begin. But I think that what his attorney, Mr. Nelson, had to work with, he did a pretty good job because let's face it, Dereck Chauvin was, and if not is, the most hated man in America tonight. He certainly was back in May 25th of 2020. So the attorney did a great job. The prosecution just had much more compelling evidence, and that's where it resulted. The jury has spoken. And like I said, you have to respect the verdict. All right? And let's face it, even if people thought that there was going to be a not guilty, or they were hoping for a not guilty, whatever reason, the jury rejected that. Okay. And there was plenty of evidence to find Dereck Chauvin guilty of all counts. Jan, now 3 more officers are going to be arrested. Well, they haven't been convicted. They've all been arrested, but they posted bond. So they'll remain at liberty, free on bond, until and if they are convicted at trial, or if there's a guilty plea, they may be remanded. It just depends. Metalhead, do they have separate sections in prison for convicted cops? Now, it's called segregation, but even in segregation, you're going to be with people that may not like police officers. They may be in segregation for their own purposes, but you never know. Someone's going to try and take a crack at him at some point. It may not be tomorrow or next week or 6 months from now, maybe 6 years from now. You just never know. And my guess is if some inmate gets their hands on Dereck Chauvin, that it'll be something equivalent to what he was convicted of relating to George Floyd as to the manner of death. But that's just my thinking. Let's see here. All right. So, wow. Can you already believe already 40 minutes into it? It goes by so fast. And I was going to do it. Are we doing this now?
Yeah.
Okay. So first, why don't we do this? All right. So for the longest time, we have done CrimeTalkSearch.com. And I'm telling you, if you are not suspicious or maybe just curious about somebody, go to CrimeTalkSearch.com. You can sign up for a free background subscription service. Well, you can sign up for a background subscription service for a nominal fee. And when you sign up, you can do as many searches as you would like. And when you do that, you're going to get a report of people that you search while you wait. And it's going to have background information regarding emails, phone numbers that people use, their social media sites, criminal history, property records, divorce records, right? So if you meet somebody online, are they really divorced when they can't go back to their place? They'll always go to your place all the time. Those are the kind of things you can find out. Oh my gosh, he or she is still married. Check that out. Okay. So go to CrimeTalkSearch.com. If you haven't done so already, also, please hit the subscribe button as well as the little bell. And, you know, we appreciate everybody that subscribes. We wouldn't be here if it weren't for subscribers. But let's face it, this is not for the vast amounts of money that we make on the YouTube channel. Basically, it helps cover the costs associated with it. I haven't quit my day job just yet because I can make probably what I make doing this in 1 or 2 days of doing all my lawyer stuff. But I think it's important for people to understand the legal process and have it explained to them by somebody that understands it and not add to the misinformation or speculation game. Now, for those of you who do not watch us all the time, that's right. We have Miss Winnie, right? The bulldog, Miss Winnie the bulldog. She's my new bulldog. I've had several bulldogs over the years, but Miss Winnie, she's cute, adorable. Can't believe it. In fact, we even set up a TikTok page for her. And are we over 1,000 subscribers there yet,
Yeah,
Julie? We're over 1,000 subscribers. So if you go Miss Winnie the bulldog on TikTok, and I think she has an Instagram too. Cutest dog ever. Just saying. But anyway, we got a gift package today from Pets, PETTZ.com. All right. And look what they sent us. Oh my gosh. Little chew toys with crunchy multi-ball. Look, Miss Winnie is going to love that. Oh my gosh. Then we have the Power Chew because Miss Winnie has some teeth coming in the back. She is a big chewer these days. And oh, look, a stuffing free gator. Look at that. And it squeaks. Look at that. She literally sits and squeaks her toys all day long. So go to pets.com, PETTZ.com. Get all your pet supply needs. And hey, if it's good enough for Miss Winnie, it's good enough for everybody, right? Because has very discriminating taste, I must say. She only likes the best little toys that go squeak. All right, let's get back to the questions that we have here. Yes, bulldogs, they have such character. They do. They can almost punish you if they're mad at you. It's interesting. Yes, the squeaky toy. Yes, your dogs love that stuff. All right. Let's see here. I make money in one day what it takes for your papa's safe. Feel like a rob a bank. That's a song. Christina, do you think the judge wouldn't have noticed this? Yeah. Yes, Miss Winnie is living the dream, Only thing we're going to have to get her is some bigger headphones when she goes to fly on Crime Talk 1. Why? Because she's gotten so big. She's almost 6 months old, I think, now. And her little head muffs for flying on the plane are already too small. Let's see here. The judge also told the defense attorney yesterday that couldn't use Waters' statement that he could use Waters. It tells me they knew Dereck was going to before it was given. Rebecca, I would respectfully disagree with that. Your question is, the judge told the defense attorney yesterday that he could use Waters' statement to appeal the case. That tells me that they knew the verdict was going to be before it was given. I would disagree with that. When you're in court, you constantly talk about the record. You talk about, hey, I want to make sure this gets on the record for appellate purposes. You are always thinking about, unfortunately, you have to think about, what if I lose? So if I lose, what do I need to put on the record so that it's there? I wouldn't read anything into it where he says, hey, you may get a trial. Maybe I don't think the judge was telegraphing anything. He certainly didn't do it in front of the jury, but that was just his thing. Hey, you can set it for appeal. I had a judge tell me that last week. Your record's made for appeal, Mr. Reich. That's it. Do I think he thought my client was guilty? I have no idea. He never said. He didn't indicate anything otherwise. That's what a good judge does. And then we got a not guilty. So you're always thinking and you're kind of talking in the sense of, what if we lose? Okay, you have to do that. Let's see here. It's Miss Winnie the Bulldog on TikTok, Jen. Let's see here. Hopefully you can find it. She's cute little bulldog. I mean, I don't know how to describe her. Brindle. Let's see here. Is it true that a juror said, just watch the video of them answer? I don't know. Is it true that a juror said no, just watch the video of them answering? I don't know what that means. I'm sorry. Love for Life 1. All policemen are going to have a tough time doing their job now. How about the 95% who've been killed this year? Did anyone hear a peep about that? Actually, I think it's higher than that. I think it's like up to 110 police officers that have been killed. And let's face it, police officers have always had a difficult job. They have had to work with the public that doesn't necessarily like them. They have a tough job. They have to make split-second decisions that could not only affect their life, but obviously their families, as well as the people that they're interacting with. And I mean, that's just the reality of it. I mean, when you become a police officer, you have a lot of responsibility. And it's one of those responsibilities that if you mess it up, there's going to be consequences to it. You know, the higher the risk, kind of the higher the reward, so to speak. But, you know, police officers, hopefully they get good training. Hopefully they use good common sense. But, you know, you have to be careful in what you do. Look at the case up there in Minnesota as well, in the town just over, where the officer of 26 years of experience shot Mr. Wright, and she thought that she was reaching for her taser. I mean, I think most people say, how the hell do you do that? But she made the mistake. And guess what? That mistake cost her, obviously she killed somebody. It cost her job, maybe, you know, a retirement after 26 years, as well. And it could cost her liberty, her freedom. And so, like I said, most people think, oh, it'll never happen to me. It'll never happen to me. And nobody wants to be judged at their worst moment in their life. But that's what the court system is about. It's not whether somebody's a good person or a bad person. It's simply about whether the facts, the allegation charged took place. Bottom line, that's it. Like I said, courts don't care if you're a really good person. If you're a bad person, you're charged on the facts that are presented. And all that other stuff comes in at sentencing. That's it. I mean, I try to describe people. They're like, well, I'm a good person. I'm a good person. Why won't they consider that? Let the jury know that I'm a great guy. Well, it's not really relevant whether you're a good guy. It simply is what is alleged and charged. Did it happen? It's like taking your life. Maybe people may not realize this, but these before the digital age, there were actually movies, right? You take the reel and imagine if that was your life, and they laid it out on a table, and they spliced that film, which is kind of your life, and it could be 20 minutes of your life or 9 minutes and 29 seconds of your life. And that's the only thing that matters. Did what they allege happen? That's it. And I think that's where a lot of people really get wrapped around the axle. Yes, Chauvin was a police officer, had been for 19 years, I think. But he also had a lot of complaints, more complaints than some police officers get in, an entire lifetime or a career, certainly probably above average, so to speak. So maybe he wasn't a great police officer, but guess what? The judge limited that. It's not whether he was a good officer in the past. It's only about what happened here. There was a lot of other bad stuff that could have been brought in as it relates to George Floyd and his character. Not relevant, right? The judge didn't allow it. He allowed in one incident as it related to the drugs because that's what the judge limited it to, and that's really what he should have done. Like I said, it doesn't matter if the victim's a good person or a bad person. It doesn't matter if the defendant is a good person or a bad person. Only if what is alleged happened is proven beyond a reasonable doubt. And obviously here, that is what happened. He's been found guilty. The jury has spoken. He's, as a matter of law and as a matter of fact, he is guilty of George Floyd's death. So it's, for lack of a better term, now it's official. All right. I don't want to go back and rehash a bunch of the facts. Okay. Yeah, Joy. Let's start a conspiracy. One juror said no and the judge missed it. Yeah, no, that if there was somebody that heard no, guess what? Somebody in the courtroom would have said, Judge, I think the juror said no. They reached a unanimous decision. The jury was polled where the judge went after and said, is this, yours and the jury's decision? They all said, yes. I did not hear anybody say otherwise at all. So, okay, Leah Latham. So how can they charge him for killing one person 3 times? Really good question. Lots of people have this question. Chauvin was only charged with the killing of George Floyd 1 time. But what he was charged under was 3 different theories of prosecution, right? The first charge was murder in the 2nd degree. So if somebody causes the death of a human being while committing or attempting to commit, I'm sorry, wrong paragraph. Sorry. Look, I'm just pulling this up here real quick. I have it right in front of me. Let's see here. Basically, if the defendant causes the death of a human being with intent to affect the death of that person or another, but without premeditation. So basically, you believe that you're causing the death. That's murder in the 2nd degree. Then you go to third-degree murder, and that's any person who causes the death of another by perpetrating an act eminently dangerous to others and evincing a depraved mind without regard for human life is guilty of murder in the third degree. All right? Different theory of prosecution. One is basically intentionally killed somebody without intending premeditation. This is that you knew basically it's like a reckless homicide. You're engaging in dangerous activity and kind of evincing a depraved mind. That photo of Chauvin sitting on the back/neck of George Floyd, that could show a depraved mind, right? Without regard for human life. Most people would say, hey, we should probably check on this guy. You know what? He hasn't resisted in a while. I should probably check on him. I can't say the crowd was going to, come get me, and so I got to sit here and stay that. Keep that on. Keep the pressure on. And then manslaughter. A person who causes the death of another by any of the following means is guilty of manslaughter in the second degree and may be sentenced up to 10 years in prison. A person's culpable negligence whereby the person creates an unreasonable risk and consciously takes chance of causing death or great bodily injury, harm to another person. So second degree murder is that you knowingly killed somebody, but it wasn't premeditated. Like you had a pretty good idea, or you should have known what was going on, right? Then you had reckless, like a reckless manslaughter. It's basically under their third degree murder, it's like a reckless manslaughter. It's basically saying you engage in such reckless activity that you basically knew or should have known that something bad was going to happen. And then the manslaughter in the second degree is almost like a criminally negligent standard. The person's culpable negligence whereby the person creates an unreasonable risk and consciously takes chances of causing death or great bodily harm. It's a reasonable negligence. Is it reasonably foreseeable? If you engage in conduct that's reasonably foreseeable that somebody could get harmed or injured, that's a negligence standard. So it's three different theories of prosecution, whether it's negligence, reckless, or knowingly. But the bottom line is it's only one obviously death. And so that's how and why the prosecution charged it. They're alternative theories. The judge said you can find him guilty of all three charges, none of them, or some of them. And that's what they did. They said, you know what? He's guilty. Boom, check the box. We think he was in a negligent type situation under the second degree manslaughter where he creates an unreasonable risk. Makes sense. Third degree murder, whereby causes the death of another by perpetrating an act eminently dangerous by others and evincing a depraved mind without human regard. That's basically a reckless standard. And then the knowing standard of second degree murder causes the death of a human being with intent to effect the death of that person or another, but without premeditation. So different standards, different mental states. Jury says, oh yeah, we got you knowingly, reckless, and the negligence standard. Check, check, check. Guilty, guilty, guilty. So that's how he can, Leah Lantham, hopefully that explains why he was charged the way he was. Like I said, I think those are all lesser included offenses, so they'll merge, but he'll be sentenced up to the maximum on the second degree murder, which would be 40 years. Let's see here. It skipped ahead. Somebody said, but you said it would be irrelevant. So the jury should come back with guilty with one of these three and either two, but he can be guilty of all three. Hopefully, Mike, that my answer just explained that. Ryan thinks that it was nothing but a circus, should have been moved for a fair trial, sequestering jurors. And those may be issues for appeal. But all of the jurors said that they can be fair and impartial, listen to the evidence, reserve judgment till they heard all the evidence, and follow the instructions given by the court. There's no indication, at least that we can tell, that affected it in some way, unless there's some sort of interview with the jurors and they say, oh my gosh, we were absolutely terrified of the ramifications if we said not guilty. We had to find him guilty of everything. I don't think they're going to say that. I think they're all going to say, he's guilty. We stand behind our decision. So I think that's the way it will be. Okie dokie. The decision's been reached, man. I mean, he's guilty. People can rehash it all they want, but unless there's something out there that wasn't presented, and like I said, this is why we want the defense to have a good defense attorney. So when the verdict is reached, that there's faith in it, that there's not a just complete sham job, right? Like, remember, you see those cases where somebody been in prison for a murder they didn't commit for 20, 30, 40 years on death row or something along those lines, and they had crummy attorneys. We don't want defendants to have crummy attorneys. It takes away the legitimacy of the process. You want an attorney that's in there putting on a zealous defense. So like in this particular case, nobody could say, oh man, Dereck, Chauvin didn't have a good attorney. No, he had a fucking great, excuse my language, he had a great attorney, and he was in there scrapping with the prosecution, nose to nose throughout the trial. He gave it a run for the money. He came up short. Guess what? You're in court. Somebody is going to be unhappy. There's always a winner and loser in court. There's the proverbial splitting the baby in court. Someone's going away unhappy. That's why a lot of people don't go to trial. They simply take plea bargains. Let's see here. Let's see any more questions that we got here. Man, it goes by so fast. Let's see, Lisa, I think it's up to 40 years, unless, of course, with the Blakely waiver we've talked about. Let's see here. I'm surprised the jury read and understood the counts that quickly. I guess I have a flow chart, yes, no type thing. No, I mean, if you watch the jury today, go back and watch the Chauvin closing arguments. I think it was yesterday. Can't believe it was already Tuesday, right? So Monday, you can watch the judge read the instructions. They're straightforward. There's no trickery in there. They're supposed to be simple. Usually, jury instruction packet, maybe it's 20 pages long, but these people were sequestered. What else are they going to think and focus on? This is all they've thought about for the last 3 weeks. And so they know what they have to do. They've heard the evidence. They saw it. They took notes. They heard the prosecution say, hey, consider this in our closing. You heard the defense say, hey, consider our side. Consider this in their closing. They thought about it, and collectively they went through it. I don't know what to tell you. It doesn't surprise me at all. I thought it was kind of a quick verdict, but that doesn't surprise me. I had a quick verdict last week. It was good. It was good for me. Not so good for the prosecution. So that's just the way it goes. I mean, we've all been there on the prosecution defense side. You get a quick verdict, think, oh, that's good for me, and maybe it's not. It's just the way it is. I mean, they considered it for 10 hours, but they've been thinking about it for the last 3 weeks. Everybody thinks in a long trial, they're going to deliberate a long time. I mean, it usually comes pretty clear by the end of that time what's going on. When you have a 4-hour trial and it takes them 3 days, maybe you think there's something's not right here. But that's the way that's the way it happens sometimes. Let's see here. Kristen, I didn't think that he would get all 3 guilties, maybe 1 or 2. I was thinking more that he would come back on the manslaughter, but hey, you got to respect the jury. I figured he'd be guilty of something, but that's the jury's prerogative. They can do that under the law. And 12 people agreed. And like I said, that's now a matter of law, and as a matter of fact, he's found guilty of the death of George Floyd. Let's see here. Lack of empathy is why people can't do everything in their powers to see the point of view of the opposite side. There was forgotten, so now we end up with this us versus them society. I agree. I can't disagree with that. I mean, it seems like everything is always us versus them, you versus me. You know, there can be middle ground. You know, there's good points on all sides in that particular case, but the jury decided. And guess what? In the big picture, we can all have opinions, but at the end of the day, their 12 votes were the only ones that mattered. And you have to respect it. You have to respect the decision. All right. Can you believe it's already an hour already? That's right. Well, guess what? That means our time is up here, but we will be going to our Patreon just momentarily. So if you haven't become a Patreon member, please do so below. We will send you a link tonight, and we will continue this conversation, talk about whatever you want to talk about. But you can also call in and talk to me. And frankly, if you disagree or you think, hey, Scott, you're all messed up, you're wrong in whatever analysis you gave, we'll put you first in line. Okay? So that's where we are tonight. Thanks for joining us. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe, hit that like button. Let's get the shadow, whatever they call it, off of our page. Something's not right. You can't go from literally getting 1,000 subscribers a week, every week for the last 2 years, or not more, to all of a sudden, getting 20 a day. Something's not right. So we will figure it out. So make sure you like our channel. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful evening, and we will see you in a few minutes on our Patreon page. Have a great night.